24/7.
24/7.
Bold Moves Radio.
Bold Moves Radio.
Afrika nakupenda sana. Oh, Afrika nakupenda sana.
Welcome to Bold Moves Radio. The show is Prudent Woman with myself, Rhulani, Baloyi. You are welcome. We are together once again. We come to you every Sunday from 4 o'clock until 5 o'clock. This is Prudent Woman for you, brought to you by Bold Moves Radio. We are a show that is about empowering women. We say women, we should be prudent in our doings. We must be intentional. So we must be ready in and out of season. We capacitate ourselves with information so that we can respond accordingly when that time comes, and as well as to have a very good impact towards our loved ones, because as women we have been called to raise our families. Tonight I have with me, as we continue with our show on money matters, but today we are talking on financial planning. I have with me Sis Ingrid Harris. She was here last week. She spoke to us about our personal finances. She taught us many things, as the word of God will say about Jesus. She taught us many things. She taught us one thing: to make sure that you have a vision for your money. And we appreciate it so much, Sis Ingrid, because, I trust that all the prudent women who listen to us and all those will go back and check out on what they've missed out, they will be learning so much from that show from last week when you were talking to us about having a vision, having an objective for this thing that is called money, which we work day and night for, but we do not have a plan on how to use it. So today I have with me here on studio, Sis Ingrid, will you like to greet our audience once more?
Thank you so much for having me today. It's such a privilege and honor to be here today. I shared with you earlier that we came back from a funeral, and I think the beauty of that in today's session, when I was at the funeral, it was just a reminder of how important it is for us women to stand our ground, to actually step into our power and take ownership of our lives. And that's why I'm so excited about today's topic, because I think it's obviously just to equip us for making sure that our toolbox is full and we can actually make empowered choices when we move forward. So thank you so much once again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Sis Ingrid, more especially to you, to take time and come and share with us the knowledge that you have acquired. Sis Ingrid, she's from the financial services sector. She's an expert in finance, and she knows quite a number of products that are out there in the market to help us to solve our problems. I am one person who believes all the products, or anyone who's selling anything, they will sell to us to solve problems. But it's upon you to understand that I have a problem that I want to go out and look for a solution for it, so that in return, yes, the person selling will get money as a byproduct. So today we are here. We want to talk about financial planning, something that is very important. When we talk financial planning, in most cases, we have this attitude of believing our financial planning is that I should make sure that, you have just said it, they're able to bury me. But it's not only about that, When I was preparing for this show, I realized that there's a lot that can happen to a person for them to be able to use the plan that they have financially to assist them. I asked myself, if I happen to leave this place now and I get in a very, very terrible accident, and I am admitted at hospital, I cannot speak, and this happens to many of us. You find a person in hospital for 2-3 months, not being able to do anything. But when we talk finance, the obligations that I've taken have to be to be fulfilled. Sometimes you need someone who will be able to inform those whom you have obligations with, to say, this person at this time is incapacitated. And I said, wow, it is not only upon my death. And actually, it's more important when I'm incapacitated at that time, because we have trust that I will come back, to being myself. I will come out of the coma. But if I did not do the right and the proper planning, I can come out of a coma and get into a psychological depression, because I'll come out and find that I'm in a mess. All my financial obligations have been left unattended. My creditors were not informed. Nothing has happened to me. And that can bring in another problem. When you have just defeated the illness, now you are in another problem. So today's show, we want to talk on those issues. But beyond that, we say, as prudent women, we want to make sure that we provide for our families, even when we leave this world. And we have observed in many times that as we provide for our families, because of not having engaged them, remember last week, Sis Ingrid taught us that we need to teach our children, young as they are, in the language that they understand, financial matters. But in many cases, you find that I say I've got a financial plan when I mean I've got money staked away somewhere, even through a product. When I pass on, that money will be made available. But there's no plan on how to use the money. And that very money, instead of doing well for my family, it actually destroys them. That's where you find young ones buying cars before they are ready for those, some abandoning their very own plans because they believe they're too rich to continue studying. Sister Ingrid, there's quite a lot of things that you can talk about. So today's show, I want us to look at those. Let us teach and educate our prudent women so that that resource that we've been working for works for us. In a case where I'm still here on earth, but I'm incapacitated, and in a case where I depart, my loved ones should be looked after. So that is what I want us to talk about today. Maybe you'd like to add something in terms of the two things that we wish to talk about today.
Yeah, it's so true. As you said, I think the thinking is always that you live your life and you die. And I think as a society, the assumption is funeral cover. Funeral cover. We need to have funeral cover, but when you get buried, that doesn't end. It doesn't mean it's the end of the cycle that you're supposed of the journey, your financial journey on earth. Because remember, you've got a legacy that you've worked for so long. You've got a property, you've got finances in the bank, you've got kids that you've left behind. And by the way, your debts. And my colleague always says, it's expensive to die in South Africa.
Too expensive.
It is expensive to die in South Africa. And wrapping up an estate is something that for some reason it's not a common knowledge in our society. People don't wrap up estates, and that's why you'll find that people lose houses. There's a house of a family that is there, but it's lost, and that is because the assumption is you just have a funeral policy. The person, it dies and it's done. But the reality is afterwards it's so important. And while you are thinking about the estate, there's so many other things in between that is so that if you've made provision for that, it can make whatever matter or stumbling block you get on your journey be something that you say, bring it on, you are ready for it. So yeah.
With what you're saying, it reminds me of something that we used to say, and I think now we don't see it often because we no longer have township businesses or rural businesses which were close cooperation. Our grandfathers used to operate their businesses as close corporations. And it was often said when that business owner passes on, you find that immediately 2, 3 months, 6 months down the line, you find that the shop closes. And we used to think they are going with what they've come with. And sometimes people will think, no, it's because they've been using Muti to keep the business going. And it was later when I started to understand how expensive it is, as you say, to die in South Africa. And yes, we should let you know, prudent women, it's not only in South Africa. Don't want to go and die somewhere. It's everywhere. In every country, there are obligations that one who has passed on must fulfill. We used to say they've passed on with their things, and I realized it was because they were operating a close corporation, no financial planning. Upon their death, they have to pay for all those costs, and the executor will have to sell the business, close out. sometimes not even selling the business, but they are left with no money to be able to buy stock to continue with the operations of the business. So today we're going to be talking about that. And I'm excited, that we are going to be learning about such things. They are very important. When you are still able, Sis Ingrid, it seems all is well, It seems like nothing can happen to me, but anything can happen to me. Anything, we don't wish for bad things to happen, but they do happen. Yeah, it's life. And nothing happens to you without it having happened to someone. It has already happened to someone else. And I would like to believe that that's why we have products within the financial services sector that addresses these things, because it has happened to someone else. So now they've come up with products to come and assist us to plan for such eventualities. So I would like to invite you, maybe if you can just take us holistically on the products that the financial services industry has, which are to actually address such a need.
Okay. So yeah, it's the basket is always so full, there's always so many solutions that is there. But I always say, if you have to start from the back, it's just like a project plan. Just like we spoke last week, it's a vision. If you've got a vision, you work backwards, and obviously you fill in the gaps. But if we talk about financial planning, if you think about, okay, so yes, you are planning your future, you're planning obviously for now up until death. So as we just said, obviously your legacy doesn't end at death. Your financial planning needs to actually go beyond that. So let's just put this on a time map. And you say, okay, so now I've made plan for my death. If I die, this is how I want to get buried. There is actually money that's going to be expected. Obviously, when you're coming from a royal family, the expectation of the money that you need to put away for that particular burial. So now you are buried. But the question is, what happens after that? So as I said, it's expensive to pass on in South Africa or in any country. But the reality is, you've got property. If you've got firearms, if you have kids, if you've got debts, if you've got small kids, what was your wish for them? And that obviously still needs to be adhered to. Because if you didn't make provision for that after your death, that means it's going to be the kids' burden, and obviously your vision for them would not have been outlived. But having said that, so now we've covered life. We've covered your funeral, or let's call it your celebration. You're celebrating your life, and then obviously afterwards your family continuing. If you had made provision for that, there's obviously such a thing like death cover or life cover that the market calls it, and we've and then there's obviously, and that particular funding is created for your family to continue after death. So for instance, if you had plans from a legacy perspective, if you wanted to leave your kids with something, or you wanted to cover estate, there's obviously different ways to make provision for estate, and we'll probably touch on that later. But that is important for afterwards, okay? And to make sure that there's obviously debts, all of your debts that you had, that is covered, especially if you've got a house. I mean, you've lived to actually pay for this property, and it's really, really sad just to find that you've gone through life paying this mortgage and you are not there anymore. And then 3-4 months, this house is taken away from your family because actually you haven't made provision for that. And that's where we want to make sure that obviously your legacy is taken care of. So now we've talked about your life. We've talked about your life cover. We've still spoken about your legacy. Let's talk about if before death. So usually when the assumption is when you hit 50, 60, the old people used to call it, or I guess in the Black culture, you call it old people sickness, it kicks in, you start having heart attacks, you start having, stroke, or, the things, or let's call it, it's according to the stats, according to the books, they call it critical illness. And how we were brought up, it's like, because the person is old, it's old people sickness. But what if you get, and I mean, these days, actually, according to the stats, people go through those things much, much earlier. And critical illness is actually not just for old people. I mean, the young people get it. There's such a thing. It's some of the main things that we call, that we mentioned, the most expensive that people go through, things like cancer. We get young kids, babies that are born with cancer these days, so it's cancer, if you've got epilepsy, those are things that we experience during life. And if you do, for some reason, our people don't make provision for it. So let me just draw an example. So as I said, we've covered life. We're going through to critical illness. Your spouse becomes critically ill. He got a heart attack. So now obviously he needs to go to hospital. The assumption is obviously medical aid covers for that. But now after that, you need to get special treatment. Medical aid doesn't cover for all of those things. Medical aid also doesn't make provision for you having to travel to go in. So now, for instance, we are in Polokwane, this particular treatment that your spouse is in Joburg. You need to travel there. Guess what? Me as the spouse who's looking after this person, I can't go to work. Where's that money going to come from? We've got small kids. Who's going to be taking care of that? Guess what? I was also dependent on husband's salary coming in. Now we've got a gap in our income, as well as we need to make provision for how can I actually help this man to still be part of our family, right? And then daddy comes back home and maybe he needs he needs a nurse. Where are we going to get money for that? And that is what critical illness basically covers for. And a lot of people don't do that. For some reason, it's something that is not spoken about. I found a lot of people say, no, we're not going to do critical illness cover because I might get disabled. They will rather go for disability cover, which is also good. The market also provides for disability cover. So if you do become disabled, the question is, how will you provide for your family if I become disabled? And then a lot of people will say, but you know what? My job, I can do anything. Even if I lose my legs, I can still do my job. But the reality is you need to put a ramp in your house. You need to get a vehicle that's going to make sure that you can actually still move around. You need to make so many amendments to your life. And will your salary be able to sustain that? And then the next person will say, but I've got an income protector. It will kick in at that point. But at the same time, your income is obviously covering your living expenses. Your living expenses is not going away because now you are disabled.
No, there's an addition.
Yes, it's an addition. That money has got a name already. So now you need to make provision for where do I get that money to actually put the ramp to make these changes to my life. So what we find is with the younger people, young people always think they're going to live forever, And when you talk about life cover, they think, no, it's not important to them. And I understand because they think they don't have kids and that is not important to them. So I would always urge a young individual to say, okay, so that is not important for you, but at least get life cover. Get life cover and get a income protector. Because what is important for you is if I am retrenched, or if I can't do my day job because of a disability or critical illness, that my income protector will kick in and it will at least sustain me while I'm figuring it out how I'm gonna, go on with life. Because the beauty of life is now, especially also with medical advancements, is that people can live longer with a disability, with a critical illness. You can actually get out of there but continue. But the question is, what financial impact did that particular situation bring into your life? And we see a lot of families broken apart, because of that, because they feel that they don't have that money to continue. Or we ask our family members, and you know how it goes. Black tax, it's real. So that is basically the journey, from the start to the end. And obviously if you've got little ones, that's our heartbeats. If you have kids, you need to obviously make provision for that. So if all of those scenarios step in, if you go through that, did you make provision for the little ones to make sure that they are still taken care of, that their education, the dream that you have for them is still intact, that if they want to become a doctor, if they wanted to study further, that is not hindered. So there is all of these tools and or opportunities or how can I say, should I say something that you can put into your toolkit that can actually support an individual who's got a family, who's want to plan for their financial future. And that is obviously the journey that the financial advisor will map out for you. But yeah, there's so much in there.
So you need to be in that taxi and you will have told the financial advisor where you're going, and you will have taken into consideration all these things. And that's why, as Prudent Women, we are bringing to you this episode to say, let us be aware of critical illness. And, as you said, young people think they're going to be alive for a very long time. And what I've realized is that young people are the most riskier people when we talk critical illness, because they're the ones who live recklessly. When they get behind the wheel, I've just driven some 200 kilometers just now, the cars that passed us, when you peep through, you see a young person sitting by the steering wheel and not sitting straight like I will do and carry I'm thinking if I hit a pothole, I must be able to control. The young person is sitting like this.
Yeah.
And so they are more at risk. And it's because we don't understand these things. That's why you think you don't need it. But I trust that tonight, after this episode, those who will have listened to us will see a need, because it's no use for you to work day and night, not have a plan for your family. How do you make sure that they continue with life as usual? More especially when you're still alive. Ingrid, you said something about I'll call it technology having made it possible for us to live longer. For some reason, we are under a myth that we live less. Nowadays, we die young. And it's not true. When you go and check from those who make research, you will have facts that they will have written down to show that people live up until a very old age. But I would like to believe it's those who have made plans, as you rightly put it, to say, if you have a critical illness, you can still live, but depending on how comfortable you are. And we agreed last week, money is there to buy us soft life, isn't it? Money is there to buy us health, because when you have put into place all these things, then you are able, if they say you need a hearing aid, you are able to buy a hearing aid. You need a wheelchair for you to move around your house, you are able to do all those things. So I think we are agreeing that there is a need for us to know about all these things so that we are ready, we respond properly on it. I will not want us to move to the life cover one, because I know most people would like to know more about life covers. I'm seeing even the comments on our Facebook page, and I would like to say for all of you who are joining us on Bold Moves Radio, you are welcome, and please drop your WhatsApps if you have a question on 081 But all of you joining us on YouTube and Facebook, you are welcome to send them through the comment section. And please, those who are watching us on our YouTube page, please do not forget to subscribe so that you can continuously find our programs as and when we go live, you'll be notified. I will want us to talk about the critical illness cover just before we go on an ad break, for us to understand at what age does one qualify to get a critical illness cover. I'm asking this because as prudent women, I know we have got children, minors, and we've got those who have just started working or they're at university. Can one take something like that for them?
So yes, in the according to the law, most financial services offerings would allow you to actually give life cover or critical illness and a particular needs from the age of 15. And the reality is, obviously, if you do it a little bit younger, a lot of people say, but you know what, my child is younger, why can't I take out a funeral cover or a life cover or a critical illness for my child? It's because we also live in a society where people are obviously opportunistic, and they will obviously, the reality is what we find is that they actually will hurt the child to make sure that they get certain payouts. But if you have to think about critical illness, so a lot of providers are making sure that they've got a critical illness cover built in the parents cover. So if your question is, what type of critical illness can I take out for my child to make sure if anything happens for them, if you want to take out a separate a policy for them, the base age is 15 and above. Okay, then they are actually eligible to get some form of critical illness. If it is, if they are younger, if you've on your own critical illness cover, most providers do have it actually built in to say that there's a percentage to make sure, if for instance you as mommy you've experienced cancer. So remember, the earlier you can actually be diagnosed, that is the sooner you can actually be treated for it. So if I, for instance, have cancer, and I know I've got it in my bloodline, it's obviously best to get my little ones tested. So the question is, Ingrid, if I don't have a cover for them, how am I actually going to make sure they are tested? And that's why I'm saying most of these covers, if you've got critical illness, it's actually built in for your child to even have a form of cover. And then you can at least make sure that if those traces show in your, like they call it, early stages of cancer, if your child has it, the earlier you can detect it, the earlier you can treat it, and obviously they can live longer. So yes, your question, what age? From 15 years upwards. That is actually for any life cover, you can take from 15 years upwards for your kids.
Okay. No, that's wonderful. It's very important for one to know, because we tend to think when they are still young, I don't need to take anything of that sort, forgetting that they can also find themselves in the same situation like yourself, and you want something that will help them to carry on with life and make it comfortable. And at that time, I trust that they are more expensive than myself, because at times you find that you still have to take them to university, you still have to make sure that they are able to learn a new skill. Unlike yourself, most of the time, if you are old, most companies will have ill health benefits, and I can be released from work and start something. But at 15 years, definitely you need to do something for your child, and you cannot say, no, I'll leave it, because that's what makes them to pass on early. Psychologically, a person is not having a good time. So money can buy soft life, but money without a plan will not buy soft life. It's money with a plan that will buy a soft life. When we come back, I would like us to take an ad break. When we come back from the ad break, I would want us to now zoom into life cover. I've seen quite a number of questions on life cover, and I want us to talk through it, because there are misconceptions about what life cover is, And when you see I blew it on TV, some people think they don't need a life cover. So we'll be right back with you. Let us go on and break. Welcome. This is Bold Moves Radio. The show is Prudent Woman. I'm your host, Rhulani Baloyi. Tonight, we're talking financial planning with INGRID Harris. She's a financial expert. We are talking on financial planning, how to make sure that our loved ones are well taken care of in a case where not only when we pass on, but even when we are still existing, and how to make sure that we can make sure that even ourselves, when we have such critical illnesses, we are able to be in a comfortable space to make sure that we continue to live and have a positive impact in our families, and not end up being those who place black tax on our families. It is when you have a plan. She taught us last week that let us have a vision for our money. She has just been talking to us before we went on an ad break on let us make sure that there is something that we have put in place for critical illness, to make sure that if you have to change the environment that you are staying in, you have money to cover for that. You do not rely on other people, because there are products that will help you. So now I want us, Ingrid, to talk about what we all know, from when us people of color, we talk insurance. We speak about funeral cover, from funeral, we talk life cover. But life cover, it's not our favorite because we think this money is taken away for people to enjoy upon my death. So tonight, I just want to let us talk about this thing so that people understand the importance of having a funeral, a life cover. We've spoken about the importance of having a funeral cover, and I think it's very evident. We all go to funerals. We see that you need to cater for the masses. But what is a life cover, and why should one have a life cover?
Sure, life cover. It's as you said, funeral cover. Obviously, that's what everyone seems to have. And if it comes to life cover, it's. I must also say that it's life cover. It's actually still also quite new in our society, and especially in the Black culture, because we obviously have the assumption of saying, but if I figured it out, they will figure it out as well. I can't leave them with millions. If I'm dead, because now I'm leaving with them millionaires. But the reality with life cover is it's more of, and I guess how I would like to explain it as it's making sure that whatever you've worked for all this life during your lifetime is taken care of.
Mm.
So for instance, as I mentioned earlier, you've paid for a property for all of your life, but now remember there's such a thing as assets and liabilities.
Yes.
What you actually still owe on the house and what the value of the house is. But what is the intention now, obviously, if you are not there anymore? So a lot of people will actually capture it in as life cover. Life cover is obviously can be used for many reasons. It can be used for estate purposes. It can be used for making sure that there's a legacy left for your kids. And what is your intention if it comes to life cover? And I think a lot of people, obviously, when they've got little ones, they want to make sure that, you know what, if I'm not there anymore, whoever I leave behind can still make sure that the schooling is taken care of. There's something for when to remember mommy by. And I think for me, it's so important to make sure that these are things that is taught right now. And I think we spoke about it in so much depth last week to say, it's so important to access to show our kids that right now. Because you know what, when I'm not there anymore, I think they should sit back and say, you know what, I want to make sure my plans are in place just like my mom. When they think about me not being there anymore, they should think about, you know what, she made sure we are taken care of, even though she's not there. And the old people always say that you rule from your dead, but it's to make sure that they don't get crippled by things that could have been taken care of. So you're making it easier. As you said, it's soft life. So life cover can be used for many of things. But if you are quite intentional about it, obviously in your will, it would be clearly stated how your life cover needs to be distributed. So life cover, if a lot of people don't put beneficiaries on the life cover, or they change it also as the mood goes to say, you know what, you won't inherit anything. But it's so imperative to have a life cover. And I would like to say to viewers that, if you sit with your financial advisor, or even if you sit in your own capacity thinking about your plans, draw a map, draw draw pictures. For some reason we think that you're gonna seem stupid for doing that. But a lot of, because they are not clear on where this rand is going to go. Because there's also such a thing as tax. When you are dead, there is tax. The taxman still needs to get his portion. Those are even things that the life cover can be provided for. Don't let your kids or the people that you leave behind have to worry about those, because it will just follow them. And a lot of people I've seen, because they don't have proper life covers in place, and obviously a proper plan in place, that the mom is actually left behind with nothing. you know, and the kids are left behind with nothing. And where you've paid all your life to give them a nice life, as we said, the soft life, they've experienced life, but now here they are without mommy or daddy there, who was the person who provided for them, and now they need to go from pillar to post. And that is heart wrenching. If there's no policies in place, because guess what, my kids are going to be staying with my brother, but my brother's living expenses are catered for his family. Now he needs to figure out how is he going to actually cover for my kids as well, because my sister didn't make provision for that. And that is what life cover is there, is to make sure that the people that you left behind they are still being taken care of. And because obviously your income did cater for something. But, and a lot of elderlies, for instance, would say, but, I don't have small kids anymore. Don't you want to leave a legacy? That's what I'm saying. My wish for myself is to see my kids going to varsity and walking the journey with them, right? But if I'm not there anymore, for them to sit back and say, "My mother took care of us. She provided, she made it possible for us." And that is what life cover is for, to make sure your legacy is actually still outlived.
It's surprising that, we want to be remembered even when we've passed on in this world. But I'm just remembering something. Most of the bursaries that we have in this country, they are named after certain individuals. Do you think anyone can forget them? Not only their families, but even us. We keep on knowing those people because they've left something. If you do not leave anything in this world, you must be ready not to be remembered.
Yeah.
You are not leaving a legacy. Why will anyone think about you? Because this life, we are here to work. We are here to work, so you should have done something. There must be something that you will have done. And I love the fact that you say life cover is there for you to leave a legacy, but also to cater for all your creditors, who will come to the issue of someone listening to us saying, I do not have creditors. You have said you have a last bill. Everyone, when you pass on in this world, there's the last bill that government expects from you, as long as you have lived. And when we say a person has lived, it means they've got assets. Yeah. And I see, I'm seeing at the comments from our viewers. I love the conversation here. I see this gentleman saying this episode is for everyone. So saying it's also for men, and I love it when men are listening with us, because it does not mean the prudent women will grow in the families alone, but will take along our partners, because we agreed that the vision of our finances must be the vision of the whole family. Coming back, Ingrid, to life cover. I understand. When I have creditors, maybe time and again, I can be saying, oh, I owe R1 million. I need to have R1 million life cover so that I can cover for that. But there are other things that I cannot be able to preempt and say, this is what I owe. But also, I don't think it's feasible for me to every month saying, now I owe R1 million. I've taken a car, now I owe R1.6 million. I keep on changing my life cover because I think there are costs involved with taking life cover. How should one go about knowing how much I need to take out as a life cover?
Yeah, so so if you sit with so the rule of thumb is usually your living expenses, multiply it with youngest child, multiply or plus with your with your expenses, with your debts that you have.
So it will be, if my living expenses is R1,000, my youngest child is 6, so it's 1,000 times 6
Times 6
times
plus your debts.
plus my debts.
That's your debts.
Okay.
So that's usually the rule of thumb. But remember, when you sit with your financial advisor and also many financial institutes, they obviously have these fancy calculators who can obviously also make provision for tax and for inflation, because you need to make sure that that is also calculated. And what if you actually have also another child in between, And that's why it's so important to always meet with your financial advisor at least once a year to make sure that it actually adapts according to your growth and according to your new needs. But yeah, the rule of thumb is that, but it obviously changes according to your needs as you grow up.
So right there, you are again reminding us that when you want to have a good and be able to attain your financial vision, you cannot do it alone. You need a financial advisor, because those are the people with formulas on how to calculate these things. Even if I'm an accountant, I may not know the tax laws, but I trust that these people are skilled in those, They know how to calculate your tax, all these things, and this and that, and they're able, it will shock you to realize that out there's even formulas that can help you to know how much you are expected to live on when you are of age, and for if you are going to live for this long. And looking at your profile, they can even tell you that with your profile, the diseases that you have, and your lifestyle, you can live up until this age. And it's unfortunate that I don't know, maybe we're scared to find out on these things. We prefer to live in the dark and just journey. But I've realized that financial advisors have these things, at their disposal, and they can be able to help us. I see someone here uh, saying, instead duty could really leave your heirs with nothing. Ensure that if you have substantial assets, that your will is drafted by a professional with knowledge on tax, financial products, and the law. Check your financial advisor's accreditation qualifications to ensure they know all the aspects. And I think last week you spoke to us about the responsibilities, the obligations that financial advisors have, and government regulates them. That is one thing that I realized, that as a society, we tend to think these people can do as they wish. And when you realize, when I was doing the preparations for last week's show and this week's show, I realized that these people are highly regulated, and there is a body that government has put together to make sure that they're policed. You see how they care so much about us, but it's unfortunate when you do not know something, you may not know that it exists, and you find yourself just, living. I would like us to go on an ad break. When we come back, I want us now to to just finish the talk on on life covers, but I wish for us to talk on what is it that one can put in place to make sure that these plans that we're talking about are administered, like you said, ruling from the grave, to make sure that your wishes come to pass. The money that you have set aside for schooling does not go to buying a Maserati. Thank you. Let us go on an ad break. We'll be right back with you. Welcome to Bold Moves Radio. The show is Prudent Woman with myself, Rhulani Baloyi. Tonight I have with me Ingrid Harris. We are talking to you on financial planning, and thank you for joining us. And every Sunday we are with you on different topics, say on different topics of life. Yes, the show is called Prudent Woman. We say let us be prudent in our decision making. Women, let us be intentional and have a positive impact towards our loved ones and even ourselves, so that we are not taken by circumstances of this world, but we are ready to respond accordingly. Before we went on an ad break, we have been talking on life covers, the importance of life covers, and how much should you be taking out as life cover, and the importance of engaging your financial advisor. Last week, she was telling us of a taxi going to Sishiro. So you can see you need to be in that taxi. As long as the financial advisor knows where you're going, you are in good hands because they are regulated. So all you need is to stay and trust upon your financial advisor. Do not get off when you get to the circle. You are going to Sishiro, and do not jump and get to another taxi because they've got the sunroof. You continue with this one. And thank you so much, Ingrid, for being with us. And we are getting learned on how to take care of our finances. Before we went off, I said we'll just finish up on life covers. Because when I was doing my research, I found out that beyond just life covers, there are products in the market that can cover what you said, your last bill on earth, your estate duty and your creditors and all these things. I will want you to just give us a snippet of what these products are all about. I know our prudent women will go out and search for that information to be able to take advantage of the products.
Yeah. So traditionally, we used to do a lot of financial advisors, and it's still being done in the market. There's nothing wrong with it, where a financial advisor will actually give you an actual life cover to be able to make provision for your estate purposes. So he would already do the calculation for tax. He would obviously do the calculation, your assets versus liabilities, make provision for, if there's something that you want to leave for your kids. He will actually put all of that in there, and with the cost for what the estate cost would be. So that is the wish of what obviously the calculation was supposed to be, right? But then there's also now we've evolved into saying, how can we make things easier for the financial advisor and also for the people that we've left behind? So there's products in the market currently that actually provides support if it comes to estates. So where you sit with your financial advisor, you sit with wherever you get your product from, and they're basically saying, they do the assets and liability test. They say what is your assets currently? What is your liabilities? Do you have little kids? Do you have firearms? Do you have vehicles? Because remember, if anything happens, if you pass on, there's going to be a transfer cost that needs to be administered. And that is it's a hefty fee. And people don't understand, if you don't have an estate planned, the reality is the person that you leave behind needs to go from pillar to post to make sure we wrap up your estate. So currently there is a state products that's actually in the market that says, you pay us a certain amount and we make sure this is taken care of hassle-free.
Yeah.
So obviously that is accompanied by a will that would have also been drafted by obviously professionals, and that will is to say whatever the wish was of the person, or the person that the loved one is still being administered, but also your estate is being wrapped up accordingly. But it doesn't come out of your life cover. So your life cover is there. Yeah. But there's an amount to take care of Mr. Taxman, of whatever estate assets you, or any liabilities you still have of the market, and it just encapsulates everything. So I've seen a lot of people, and they stop kids or young people or wives that come by, and they say, my husband had this and we don't know where to start. Then we say, you need to go to the magistrate's court. You need to get the executor's letter. You need to do that. You need to do that. And the reality is, what people then do is they go to a lawyer, because we don't know. And guess what we do if we go to the lawyer will take an additional fee. Yeah. So why we've moved from the life cover to the estate package is because, remember, if you've got a life cover, and a lot of people say, I don't have to make provision for estate because I've got a policy wherever and I've got a policy there, and that can take care of the estate. But what happens is, the minute you've got, for instance, now you've got one policy at the bank and you've got another at another provider, that R1,000,000 that is paid, that now you've been saving for that is paid into a estate-led bank account. The minute it goes into that bank account, is according to the law, it has to go into that bank account. Yes. Whoever wraps up your estate will take 3.5% plus VAT out of that amount already. So just an example, if you have a R3,000,000 life cover, out of that already takes 120,000. So if you didn't make provision for that, guess what? They're going to take, that needs to go off there. So that's why if you look at these packages, just make sure that it encapsulates everything. It can actually wrap up your entire estate from beginning to end, and that you don't have to do the runaround. But as I said, that is usually accompanied with a will, and the will is obviously going to make sure that your wishes are granted. And these days, people even place in their will to say, this is how you're going to bury me. You're not allowed to you're not going to get my money if you don't bury me in this particular way. But
and again, it's only that person with money who has got the voice, even when they are passed on.
Yes. Yeah. But can you imagine giving your family that sense of comfort?
Yes.
That sense of comfort and relief. I've seen it so many times where people don't even know where to start. But to make sure that when you speak to your family, to say, listen, if you don't want to go to that financial advisor, or there's the file, there's the contact number, have it on your fridge. If something happens, just like we know 911 on your car, you've got that in case of an emergency. Make sure that your family know where to go in the event if anything has to happen to you.
And the beauty of the product you're talking about, it takes a lot of hassles away from you, but again, a lot of heartache. I've seen families who, when they are waiting for the estates to be wrapped up, sometimes they have to move out of the house. The kids have to leave their schooling. and be somewhere, because these things, when you do not know where you're going, it takes forever.
Yeah.
You know, you tend to go round and round in circles because you don't know what you are doing.
Yeah.
But with all these things that you are saying, you know, these are professionals. So they step in and fasten everything, you know, and make sure that everything's done in a haste, and your family can continue to mourn you, remember you in a better way. Can you just imagine your 6-year-old when they have to change schools? What is going on in their minds to say, I'm changing schools because my mommy has passed on? So the last memory of this 6-year-old is that mommy passed on and I had to change schools. So, prudent women, this is a very important lesson that Sis Ingrid is taking us through. We thank you so much for the information you're giving us. And I see some prudent women wants to know about investments. Unfortunately, because of time, I will not want us to get into that. We will have some time coming in and talk only on investments, because those are money matters as well. But for now, Sis Ingrid, as we wrap up our show, I wish for you to take us through. You have made all these plans, these provisions are there, but you are not sure if the money will go into what you were providing for and will make sure that your family is well taken care of, or the money will just go to waste. Because even if you say you have taught a child, I mean, a 12-year-old getting 500,000 into their bank accounts. I've seen it. I've heard parents saying, I can't manage my child because my child, when the daddy passed on, our benefits were released and my child got 500,000 in her savings account. They don't care, you know, they pay it into the savings account. And can you just imagine, will you be able to manage that 12-year-old with 500,000? You can't tell them anything. They don't understand that 500,000 is not enough. You and I understand that 500,000 will not take you anywhere. But with them, they think 500,000 has opened up the world. They can take out on the world, you know? So how do you make sure, as a prudent woman, what is it that I should do to make sure that that does not happen to my child?
So I always say I always say to my loved ones, I said, get your affairs in place, because don't make me busy while you are dead. You know, when you are dead, be dead. Let me mourn you, but don't make me busy while you're dead. And obviously, a solution for that is have a will in place. And while you've got a will in place, have a trust in place. Because remember, if you, husband and wife, pass on and you've got little kids, the reality is now you've obviously in your will, you've made provision for a guardian.
Yes.
But is that, if that guardian goes through a moment of life hits them, life happens,
life
you know,
happens,
life
yeah.
happens, and they go through a dip. Did you make provision for that?
Mm.
That they don't go through a moment of, actually, I can just blow this kid's money that was actually provided. So that's why it's so important to make sure that, yes, to say, you know what, Mr. Cousin, whoever, I trust, I put you as my guardian, but I'm also made provisions to make sure my money is paid, the kids' funds are actually provided for accordingly. So in your will, you can actually put barriers in there to say, at this age, so this is when the trust will make sure the school and things are taken care of. At certain times, we're going to give certain money to the child, maybe when they turn 18 or 21, and you can actually build portions in for your child up until they are 30 or 60. I've made provision for my kids up until they are 60, because I'm like, I think by then they will be wise enough to know that, you know, the last bit my mom gave me, I've screwed it. I'll make sure I learn a little bit, you know. By then they are wise. But you can actually build it in your will. So you can put those measures and plans in place, but make sure there's a trust that accompanies that, because the trust will make sure that whatever the executor is actually is administering is according to your wishes. Your legacy can live on for the next 60 years if needs be, but making sure that kids don't, or that money that you've worked for doesn't go into the wrong hands. So important to make sure that you've got a trust in place. So important.
And you know, we used to think trust it's for all those who are rich. I went to Model C University when we were there, and you'll see all these white kids, and we had a word for them. We'll say they are trust fund babies. And we believed that is so far from me. And I'm grateful. Today I'm learning it's not far from me. I can actually do it. I can make sure that my children are trust fund babies. And being a trust fund babies actually is the opposite from what you are saying, is the opposite of what we understood. Back then, when we said they're trust fund babies, we thought they're spoiled,
Yes.
they've just got money everywhere. That's a trust fund baby. But from what you are saying is the opposite. They have money, but their money is being administered through the wishes of that one who has given them the money. And what is nice in this country, the more we get to hear all these lessons, when since we started Prudent Woman and had different professionals coming in, I started to love South Africa more, because you realize that we've got an environment that is well regulated. South Africa has got the best policies that you can think of. Because with all these things, trusts and all these things, South Africa has got policies and regulations that governs them. But it's unfortunate that those of us whom these things are meant for, we are not making use of it. And it's sad, Sis Ingrid, that we are not making use of it because, in our Black community, you and I's age, our parents are those who had an opportunity to work. Those whom, when we were being liberated, had an opportunity to get into those positions that previously a Black person could not participate in. But the unfortunate part is that them having worked this hard, when they pass on, everything disappears. Sometimes you find that they did not make provisions like you were telling us on making provisions for your creditors or for your estate duty. Sometimes you find that they did not make provision like you were telling us about trusts and wills. And I get the money and I think I've arrived and I go to some exotic holiday with someone, disown everyone in my circle just to spend the money because I've never laid my hands. Remember, we come from an environment where we have never had all these resources. So when all of a sudden, even myself, if now I look at my phone and I've got 1.5 million, without a plan, without having been taught, I can go crazy and I can leave everything that I'm doing and think I've just purchased the world, it can listen to me. And unfortunately, it's not like that. It's way far away from that. As we complete our conversation, I realize someone is asking a question, which I think it's very important. Saying, some of us believe we will leave a legacy for our children through the assets that we have accumulated. I do not need a life cover. I do not need that product that we're talking about. What will be your advice to this person?
So if we say legacy, we're obviously referring to property, and we
I've got houses, I've got cars.
So I always say, my legacy is not necessarily my child's legacy. You've got farms, you've got things that you leave behind, but what makes you think that that child actually wants that? So if that is the things that you leave behind, remember, if you are leaving it behind, just make sure that there is a trust that still administers, because there is tax that is still accompanied with those properties. There is still assets that obviously it still needs to be managed. So if you are leaving it, just make sure that the costing of running those things, and obviously because remember, there's such a thing as transfer cost. Whoever you're leaving it, transferring it, there is a cost involved in that. So whose responsibility is that? And guess what? If there is a taxman on top of that, that transfer will never happen. It will never happen. You'll actually get to a point where they actually attach these assets because there's no provision
for the
made
payment of all this
because the person that you've left behind didn't know what your vision was, because you've outlived your vision. And it's such a powerful thing, because as you were saying, let's talk about farms, let's talk about houses, let's talk about cars. It's things that we couldn't acquire before. So, and I mean, even with livestock, what our parents used to think like what is wealth versus what we perceive as what is wealth is totally different. And that's why if you're saying you are leaving it behind, make sure that you've done the due diligence to make sure if you're transfer it with knowledge as well. And if it comes to paperwork, read those things. Like it is obviously knowledge is power, but at the same time, I always say to my little daughter, I said, all of your answers are right in front of you.
Yes.
It's your responsibility just to take time, use a highlighter, draw a picture, ask questions, Google, read.
Yeah.
The answers are right in front of you. But towards that question, your version of legacy is not necessarily your child's version of legacy.
Yes. Thank you so much for all that you have given unto us today. I trust that all the prudent women have learned. You are now ready. You're going to go out, work on your plan. In a case where you are incapacitated or when you have passed on, how do you make sure that your loved ones are well taken care of? With those words, I would like to say this is the end of our show tonight. Next week, we are here at 4 o'clock until 5 o'clock. And I would like to say to you, next week, we talk on medical aids. And it's exciting. I think that is one area which is very exciting. And my guest for next week told me that the information that she has will help even some of us who are saying, I'm not affording a medical aid. There is something in the market that can cover for those expenses which are too huge for you, which you will have loved to have a medical aid, but because of your finances, you are not able to take a medical aid. There are other ways of coming around it. So join us next week. We are talking on medical aids. I would like to say, Sis Ingrid, thank you so much with all that you have taught us. Will you like to say bye to our viewers?
I think I just want to leave everyone with the following. Go through your paperwork. Wherever you go, do your research, ask questions. It is so important because it's going to clarify your vision for tomorrow. Whatever we've said last week, you need to be clear on your vision. Write down, mark your things, look at your policy documents. Don't just only when there is death or when there's a crisis, then you only go through those things. Ask the relevant questions. So important. Use the power that you have.
We do not have enough words to say thank you to you. Thank you so much. And to our technical team, thank you. DJ Messi in the house, we would like to say thank you. A prudent woman is graduating. We are women in the studio. Everything is being run by women, all ladies. So power to the women, woman. We shall see you next week, same time, same place. Have a blessed week. And do not forget to join us on all the other shows of Bold Moves Radio. We start with prayer every morning, 6 o'clock until 6:30. And we've got the African Experience on Tuesday. We've got Love SA on Thursday. We've got Mikondo Yati Ngwazi with Pastor Strike, our executive producer. So please come join us. Bold Moves is packed with shows which are here to give you more information, to get you knowledgeable of what's happening around us, and to empower you to be an African child, to raise that flag of hope. Thank you so much. Have a blessed week.
Streaming 24/7. 24/7.
Bold Moves Radio.
Bold Moves Radio.
Afrika nakupenda sana. Oh, Afrika nakupenda sana.